What's up everybody, Nate here, and I've been seeing this ideology floating around the United States recently that basically says Americans do not want to work anymore like they did in the past. Recently, I saw Rick Scott do an interview on Fox News, and he basically said that Americans need to get back to work. If you don't have kids, if you are able and you don't have any dependents, then well, you need to work in 2022. And it's not just him. There have been countless other companies and individuals that have come out and said that this generation is simply just lazy. Nobody wants to work as hard as they did in the past. And this issue is only getting bigger because in 2021, nearly 70 million Americans quit their jobs voluntarily, and just when we thought the Great Resignation was over, we now have a bunch more people in 2022 quitting their jobs. An average of 4 million Americans in 2022 every single month has quit their job. So things are definitely not slowing down, and nearly 40% of Americans plan to leave their job within the next 3 to 6 months. And nearly 50% of all workers have either switched careers, or they've gone from part-time to full-time, or vice versa, or they have started their own business. This has been dubbed the Great Resignation or the Great Reshuffling of our entire jobs market. And right now in 2022, it is starting to affect everything pretty severely. Our job force is starting to shift again, and while things were all on the employee side in 2020 and in 2021, now businesses are starting to push employees out. They don't have as much money as they did during those 2 years. Jobless claims recently reached their highest peak since November of 2021, meaning that jobs are starting to disappear in our economy. And with us being either in a recession right now or it potentially around the corner, things are about to get pretty dicey for our economy. So what exactly is going on here? Is Gen X, Gen Z, and the millennial generations completely lazy and just don't want to work anymore? Or are all of these quits completely justified? And this is simply just going to become the very new norm for our society. Well, today I'm going to break down everything that's going on in our jobs market and how all of this is going to affect our economy in the future. But basically, let me kind of break down how we got here. So all of this has been going on for a very long time now. This sort of struggle between employers and employees has been going on since, well, we have had employers and employees. So this is a 100+ year long struggle. But things really got ramped up over the last few years because of the pandemic. When the pandemic started in the United States, millions of Americans were suddenly put out of work. There were massive layoffs and unemployment spiked to nearly 15%. That meant that Americans now had a lot of time to kind of do their own thing. And the reason they had a lot of time was because of the government. Extended unemployment benefits, paused mandatory payments for things like student loans and mortgages, and of course, stimulus checks for Americans meant that they were still getting money in even though they weren't working. So like I said, Americans had a lot of time to do a lot of thinking about their careers, about jobs in general, and this is something that I like to call the Great Reawakening. Millions of Americans were starting to realize what jobs really meant to them and what work really meant and how money played a whole role in all of that. So they were basically taking this entire time and they were educating themselves and they were trying to figure out what they really wanted out of life. Is it a job? Is it an accomplishment at work? Or is it something in their personal life? More importantly, they were starting to figure out how they were going to get that. This all played a role in our society up until the mid parts of 2021 because eventually people got back to work because of the pandemic. A lot of those economic lockdowns ended and people went back to work, but then they randomly started to quit their jobs in mass. Like I said, nearly 70 million people in 2021 quit their jobs, and now they're continuing to quit because of the Great Resignation. 2021 also laid the foundation for a movement called the anti-work movement. So people were starting to really ask questions about jobs and about work and if they really needed to work in order to live a successful life. Millions of Americans started to quit their job because they felt like they don't have to go to work and they shouldn't be forced to work or provide value or do a task for a corporation or a company. They should be able to get all of that value themselves without having to work for someone else. And like I said, this was a really good situation for employees and for workers all throughout the country. For the actual labor force of our country, they were able to do the things that they want and really start to reconsider work and life as we know it because of stimulus and paused mandatory payments. And of course, we had had millions, if not billions and trillions of dollars trickling down from other generations. The baby boomers became one of the wealthiest generations in American history, and right now they are retiring, and they're also starting to pass away and give away a lot of their assets, trickling a lot of that money down to generations of today, like Gen X, Gen Z, and the millennials. They are now taking a lot of these assets and they can live off of them. Of course, not everybody is starting to see that great generational trickle down, but many Americans are seeing that today. So pretty much throughout 2021, workers had all of the power. They had all of the power in a business relationship, whether they were hired or whether they were looking for a job. They were able to negotiate higher salaries, better benefits, a work from home lifestyle, and of course, a better work-life balance. They were able to get all of this, and businesses basically didn't have a choice but to give them this, because if they didn't, well, they were going to go under. Businesses at this point cannot rely fully on automation for everything, so they have to have workers in order to support their business. If they don't, well, then their business is going to go under. Since the job market was really healthy, workers had the confidence that they could job hop, they could go to better jobs, they could find different companies that really supported the lifestyle that they wanted to live, and not only that, but paid them what they wanted to make. And that was really easy for businesses to take on. They were saying, sure, we can pay you whatever you want, we can give you those additional benefits, because money was really flowing over the last 2 years. The Federal Reserve and the federal government made it so trillions of additional dollars were flowing all throughout our economy. That meant businesses could grow faster, they could hire more people, and they could give out bonuses. But things are starting to shift in 2022. That additional capital is completely gone. The Federal Reserve is raising its benchmark interest rates extremely aggressively because we have super high inflation. So things are getting a whole lot more expensive, and that includes products and services from businesses. Prices are also going up, so wages are having a really hard time increasing in the US as well. Already in 2022, businesses are cutting back. They're starting to lay off people, and unemployment is most likely going to continue to rise throughout the year. And because of all of these big shifts that are coming from businesses and the Federal Reserve and the federal government, many Americans are now regretting quitting their jobs in 2022. They are basically saying that, well, they should have stayed where they were at because the fear of the unknown was way too big. They are going towards another job, but because businesses are laying off people, productivity has to be higher. Businesses are now taking a bigger role in the employer-employee relationship, meaning that work from home is disappearing. Bonuses are also disappearing, and people are now going into jobs having to work a lot longer and harder than they did at their previous job. So now the big question of all of that is, what exactly is coming next for our workforce? If businesses keep laying off people and unemployment goes up and most Americans are unwilling to work under the current conditions that companies are giving out, well, then what exactly is going to happen to our economy? Well, the first thing you've got to understand is something has got to give in our economy. You simply can't have both sides winning at the same time. Either businesses and employers are going to win, meaning that people are going to have to go back to work, or the employees are going to win, meaning that all of their demands, like better pay, better benefits, and better work-life balance, are going to be in their future. You simply can't have both sides having it both ways. And this really just depends on what exactly happens with our economy, and you really have to understand how the flow of money works in our economy. Currently, around 70% of our GDP, or gross domestic product, comes from consumer spending. So if consumers are going out and buying things from businesses, those businesses are able to grow, and that money trickles down to employees for them to go out and buy things. The problem is that really isn't happening in 2022, so people aren't going out and buying as many things. Consumer sentiment is currently dropping every single month, meaning that people feel like inflation is going to get worse, meaning prices are going to go up, and they are going to be able to ultimately buy a lot less. With them buying a lot less, well, then businesses are going to have a hard time keeping people in their economy, but at the same time, there are no new jobs being posted in the United States, meaning that if people continue to quit, well, there's not a job for them to go back to, which means unemployment is going to go up, and now they have no money to buy anything. So it really comes down to who's going to break first. Are Americans going to stay true to their ideals and say, we don't care what happens to the economy, give us what we want? Or are the businesses going to win and Americans are going to have to go back to work because they're facing unemployment or homelessness, or they can't pay any of their bills or provide for their family? Are they going to give in because of that? Number two, no matter what happens with jobs in the United States, our entire economy is going going through a massive great reset right now. Businesses are losing equity, businesses are losing capital, and they're not able to grow as fast as they could before, meaning that naturally some are going to disappear and jobs are also going to vanish. The Great Resignation might just speed that up because some businesses are going to disappear, and if people continue to quit those jobs, well, then those businesses are going to go away even faster. Not everything might disappear though, so you might have bad companies with bad ideals that are overworking people. Well, those companies might disappear and people may end up going to better, long-lasting companies. The bad companies that are unwilling to change anything about their business model, well, they are most likely going to fail. They cannot get any investor liquidity, they can't take on any debt, and with people not buying their products and nobody to work for them, well, see you later. The only companies that are going to remain are the good companies, the ones that are willing to change some things and give into some employee demands. And number 3, people are not lazy in our economy, and this Great Resignation conversation is most likely going to continue for the foreseeable future. I think right now people are asking really important questions about our society and our lifestyles. They're asking what exactly a company's role and money plays within our own life. Should jobs provide every single one of their employees with a certain standard of living, or is that responsibility solely on the individual? I don't really know what the answer is because this is a complicated situation and it's going to be very different for every single company and every single person. But what I do know is that in times like these, this is where real change starts to happen in our country. Not only that, but Gen Z and Gen X and millennials are quite possibly the most educated generations in American history. So they are realizing that you don't necessarily need to work a job, a typical 9-to-5, in order to make money anymore or in order to be happy. You can start a side hustle. You can work your own hours whenever you want to, and there is tons of money out there. What generations right now are trying to figure out is how can they get some of that money? What is the most creative way for them to get that? And a lot of them are going towards side hustles, or a lot of them are deciding that they do need to work, but not as hard as previous generations. You just need to work a little bit and then invest the rest. You need to be frugal and do a lot of investing because that's truly how your money can work for you and grow over time. We are experiencing a labor movement right now, just like we saw with the first unions in the 18th century and of course with FDR's New Deal. Do people in 2022 just not want to work? Is that the problem with our supply chains, and is that the problem with our economy today? And do people not work as hard as they did 20, 30, and even 100 years ago? Well, the answer is relative. Work is a lot different today than it was 30, 40, 50, and like I said, 100 years ago. And it's really hard to measure what exactly working hard is. For instance, if a billionaire meets up with clients at the hot tub and makes a multi-million-dollar deal all while sipping on some aged whiskey, is that working hard? Or is the construction worker who literally works all day in the hot, scorching summer sun to rebuild our nation's roads working harder? Well, I would simply argue that they're both working hard. It's just very different working. One way or another, they are both providing value to society, which is all about what work is. So are people in 2022 lazy? Well, in my opinion, no. People in 2022 are working smarter than they are harder. They're working smart not just at their jobs, but at their lives. Times have changed. People are not loyal to companies because those companies are not loyal to them. They're job hopping. They're going where the money is and where the work-life balance is. They don't care what happens to businesses anymore. You don't have to work yourself to death like other generations have had to do in the past. And in my opinion, that is a great thing. That is the whole reason we have made strides in our labor movement, so you don't have to work yourself to death anymore. Generations of today understand our greatest asset, and that's time. Once you've spent it, you cannot get it back. They would rather spend their time doing the things that they love with the people that they love, even at the expense of making a few less dollars throughout their entire lifetime. But now I want to hear from you on this issue. Do you think that generations of today are lazy and simply just don't want to work? Or do you think that right now people are working smarter and actually working towards the things that they want out of life? Whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below before you go. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all of the top business and financial news from around the country, our team puts together a free daily newsletter, and you can subscribe to it by clicking the link in this corner right here. And if you want to stay up to date with me and everything else happening in the business and financial world, I'm putting out updates 7 days a week week over here on this channel, and I've actually got another one ready for you right here, so be sure to check that out before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.